What do you believe needs to be done to create positive opportunities for girls of color?
Actually, what was phenomenal about what the YWCA did was host an event with Susan Taylor. And what was incredibly great about that is that it not only focused on our young women, but also fed the souls of older women as well, right? Whether you were in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever the age was, it's so important that we as well get the opportunity of being empowered and inspired, because we're often doing so much and don't have the same in return. So I look at my school and I look at the work that's done at the YWCA, and to me the most important thing is creating spaces where we're creating student leaders, or just leaders in general amongst our young women. And we're also providing opportunities where we're celebrating and honoring the importance of women, especially those of color. Because in our community there's often the fight and the grapple to be acknowledged without being crabs in a barrel and asking, what did you do in order to get this, right? So that's really important, and if people start to see that as a model, it can be replicated.
Now, we've all seen the video out of South Carolina at Spring Valley High School where a 16-year-old girl was in a physical altercation with a school resource officer.
Yes.
And it shocked a lot of people across America. In our schools now, there are at least, every school has a school resource officer. Do you believe a school resource officer in conjunction with zero tolerance policies actually makes schools safer?
So I'm going to be honest, since I've worked in a school, there's always been a safety officer in the building. Whether it makes the school safe or not, I don't think would be my primary argument. It's how are the individuals who are called to do this work actually engaging with the children, right? That makes the world of difference. You have teachers in buildings who incite fights with kids, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be an officer, but the question is, how are they being trained? How are they asked to interact with kids? How are they building in the community? Because unless we start to identify how adults need to interact with our children, it's always going to be a detriment, right? I've seen food workers have verbal arguments with children. I've seen custodial individuals, not in my building, but I've seen it for myself. And no one ever has an issue with those individuals, and they spend a lot of time with our children. But when we do see an officer, we immediately feel like, are we trying to say that our kids should be locked up? It's how you engage. An officer should be someone who represents peace. They should represent that they're here to support the space and keep us all safe. You have some officers who what we consider power trip, and they're not in the best interest, but not all are like that. Like my safety officers who are here, they're amazing. They participate in every activity. They're here after school. They're here on Saturdays because I do programming. And they're actually like one of the family members in my building, but that's how we engage with each other, and that's the standard that we set. But not every building is like that.
So in your leadership role, what are the strategies or recommendations you would make to other educators or other people involved in the educational system to avoid incidents like what happened at Spring Valley?
First and foremost is professional development. You have to be clear on what your expectations are, and you have to model and identify those key areas. Second thing is being sure that these individuals know the population. It's just like the officer who comes into this type of community who may live in Suffolk County, who doesn't have to deal with this type of crime rate, who doesn't have to deal with this demographic, who comes here and just feels like these individuals here may just be troublemakers, right? If you don't know your community, you don't know how to serve the community. And so until we start to make everyone accountable and start to have those different type of conversations, it's never going to change anything. So for me as a leader, anybody who serves in my building, I'm very clear on how they need to interact with my scholars, because they need to interact with me a certain way. And
now when you walk the halls of Mont Hall Bridges Academy, you know things are happening. Great things are happening here. Why did you open this school? What inspired you?
Well, what inspired me was that I had phenomenal educators in my life. My parents are not from this country, so they really relied on putting me in public school where there were going to be administrators and teachers who felt like there wasn't anything that I could not do. So being a young woman of color, coming from New York City, specifically from Crown Heights, Brooklyn, where, you know, we were borderline living in poverty, it was important for me to get that experience, right? And so now, as when I got into the field of education, I wanted to do the same thing. I was in schools that often didn't speak to the excellence or high expectations of children. I had the opportunity of opening up, being one of the founding teachers to open up a young girls' school, the Urban Assembly Institute for Young Women in Math and Science, which is now downtown Brooklyn. And that experience was really, really great because I had the opportunity of understanding how to recruit, whether it was teachers, students, being able to brand the school, building a culture. And that was, in and of itself, a great experience because I was in a position of empowering young women. Young women who we often don't tell them that they can exceed in STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. But what was missing was that I didn't have the equity when it came to boys. I wanted to give the same experience. And when I was growing up, I was considered a tomboy. I was into everything. I was a latchkey kid. And so I want to give that experience to every single child. So when you come into my building, what you feel is that love, a culture that says children of color are great. We wear purple and black because that symbolizes royalty. And I think through education, they can and will be just as great as, you know, I believe them to be. And, you know, you find adults that really, really care. And so in my way, I'm contributing to building those leaders and building those young women who know that in the future, they will and can take over this world.
Thank you, Nadia, for standing against racism with the YWCA Brooklyn. It's a pleasure to have you.
You're welcome, and I thank you for having me here.